that could not have been executed worse than I executed it. But we got it out here. So we'll do it again. I'm trying out all sorts of new stuff today. So number one, got a tripod. Appreciate that from my brother. But it's probably 30 right now, and over the next few days that 30 is going to become 50 and some rain. And so I've got to get the cows a bale of hay, but I'm actually going to put out a few bales of hay, because if it does get up to 50 and rain, then I'm not going to be able to get out there for quite some time unless we have a freeze. So I'm probably going to put out three or maybe 4 bales. These 4 got what they want. Ultimately, that's what matters. So I ended up putting out 7 bales. And that should get us to nearly, that'll get us to Valentine's Day. That'll definitely get us to Valentine's Day. And some of you probably think I'm crazy and wondering what the hell I'm thinking, but this is just, it's all experimental. This is not an enterprise yet, but we are on the ground floor of becoming an enterprise. I have the customer base, and I've been learning the hard way for 5 years. And once we move to a bigger property and can scale this more, then we will have an enterprise. But this is a good setup for starting small, and I'd like to do an entire video on starting small, because I think a lot of times the major exposure is to people that have got a lot of room and have got a little bit of equipment, some horsepower, and they can do things a lot easier than a guy like me that has no horsepower other than his own back and a truck. But I'm going to kind of let you in on what I was thinking a little bit, because first and foremost, I've only ever dumped bales off of a trailer. This is wet ground. There is a low point just on the other side of this bale, on this side of that bale, and just on the other side of the bale that's inside that hay feeder, there's a little ditch there, and it takes in all the runoff from that field over there, which is row crops. We are surrounded on this side and then in the back by 169 acres of row crops. But anyway, what ends up happening more often than not is that once we get to the new year, I've only ever gotten bales to the front half of this current paddock that we're in. Last winter, that fence row was not there. That fence row was there. I was starting to put that fence row over there up last winter. But anyway, what this is going to do, it's going to allow me to get carbon and fertilizer into the ground back there, because normally it's only been reserved for the front of this. But I want to get away from feeding along this front fence up here, because all I've ever done once I get to a certain point is feed along this front fence. And I mean, you can see it's visible. But I want to get away from doing that. And I want to also get away from having to rely on feeding just inside the gate come March. So I don't know, obviously I don't have a crystal ball and have no way of knowing what kind of winter we're going to have, but we haven't had much of a winter so far. And if I get another cold day, I might come out and drop the remaining bales. So there's 7 out here, and I think I've got 9 or 10 left over there. But this area over here always has the least amount of action, least amount of carbon, least amount of manure, least amount of urine. And I want to do that because I have no idea how long they're going to be contained to this pasture. The next step is getting in there in the very back getting that stuff in that tree line cleaned up and pushed back, because I've got about an acre of ground to gain back there from that tree line, and just brush and brambles and growth, and get a brand new fence across the back. Then I can, open that area up after it gets mowed. I'd like to put a drive lane in on the other side of that fence as well. But what the biggest con I see to all of this is that I'm just not going to maximize each bale like I have. You can look over there, fed a bale over there, there's not much left. Fed a bale over there, there's not much left. Fed a bale right above my finger when it goes away there, not much left. And fed a bale back here in the back, not much left. So they're already tearing into the other bales, which is fine. I left the twine on them. But that's the con. The con is not stretching this hay as far as I should. The pros outweigh everything else. We're supposed to get rain in the next couple of days. I have no idea when I'll be able to get back in here again. At some point, I think that we'd at least have one freeze, like good, solid, hard freeze, so I can get everything else in here. But it gets a little painful feeding hay if we have a wet February, not a cold February, but a wet February. We have a wet February and a wet March. It's horrible feeding hay, because I'm just breaking these bales apart by hand and throwing it over the fence and over the gate. And I'm trying to get away from that. Ideally, what I'd like to do is build a small corral up here, have them calve in that corral, and then kind of release them. I think it'd be diligent to have some sort of loafing shed built just inside the fence, and then to this side of the gate. For the entirety that I have had these cows, I've had a bull out here with them, either a 1-ton bull or a 2,200 pound bull. And I'm not the bigger the better kind of guy. It's what I had, so it's what I used. And especially that 2,200 pound bull, I mean, he was 4 feet at the shoulder and 4 feet wide and 8 or 9 feet long, and he created quite a barrier, and the cows would literally stand behind him when it got cold as a wind block. At least now with this, I've got places they can hunker down and lay down at night, lean up against, that would replace a building. My cows have never they've never lived under a roof. That was blasphemous to some people, but at least the ones that I have never lived under a roof. And so it's not something they've ever been used to, and they've adapted well. They hunker down under those pines if they have to, and then in the very back they could get some cover. However, now that I've got them up here, that cover lacks. So especially with these bales here, it will provide some sort of block they can lay up against. But like I said, I want to do a whole video on starting small. But this is an ideal setup for someone that is on 10 acres, does not have a boatload of capital to spend on infrastructure, does not have a boatload of capital to spend on equipment, does not have a boatload of capital to otherwise make various parts of the operating aspect of this simpler.